So, Five Nights at Freddy's Ultimate Custom Night is the latest and supposedly last game in the Five Nights at Freddy's series, which has a player fight up to 50 unique animatronic enemies with customizable difficulty settings. But you probably already knew that. The question I want to ask today is, how do you make a game that allows players to completely customize their experience scary? Sure, you can have creepy sounds or visuals, but how do you make the gameplay terrifying when players are told exactly what each enemy does beforehand? It's like me telling you there is a jump scare coming 3 seconds from now. And see, it's not unexpected and not quite terrifying. So how does Scott Cawthon, the creator of the Five Nights at Freddy's series, make his series version of hell terrifying, even though he tells the player everything about the threats they face beforehand? Oh, by the way, I'm Etra from Etra Games. I break down a game's design every other week, and today we're going to break down the design of Ultimate Custom Night. But in order to do that, we need to look at the design of the first 6 FNAF games and see why some were higher rated and some were supposedly scarier than others. I actually made a video on this topic a few months ago, so if you haven't seen it, don't! I called the dominant strategy the optimal strategy, the video quality was meh, and the audio is... it's just sad. The script was fine though, and there are some points which are extremely important to understanding Custom Night, so to summarize, I noticed that many people said the Five Nights series became less scary over time, and its user review scores dropped more and more for each of the first 4 installments. I concluded this was due to each game, except for the first, having a dominant, unfailing strategy that guaranteed victory every single time if used. However, the first game actually had an element of random chance that brought fear of the unknown. The only problem is this element of random chance, called Golden Freddy, can ruin your run unless you immediately lift your monitor when you see him. The issue with this is you are never told about Golden Freddy or how to prevent him in-game, so this event created fear of the unknown with a random chance of ruining your run. The problem with this is having a player's death be based off random chance and not skill can make players frustrated. So after getting rid of this element of random chance for the next 3 games, and giving up on the main gameplay mechanics in general to make a story-based minigame collection, he brought back this element of random chance for the 6th game in the series, Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, where your means of defense, the audio lure, and the flashlight have a random chance of failing regardless of what you do. This means, instead of repeating a set pattern of events, you have to adapt your strategy to potentially failing. What keeps this system from leading to cheap deaths like the first game is that you would have to have your equipment fail several times in a row to get an unpreventable death, meaning your strategy is constantly changing due to your equipment sometimes failing. Yet, the problem with this system is that small chance of a player losing the game due to an unpreventable death, regardless of what they do. So, why is all this important to understand the design of Ultimate Custom Night? Well, Scott Cawthon actually found out how to create fear of the unknown using randomness without any unpreventable deaths. As mentioned earlier, each installment of the Five Nights at Freddy's series has some gameplay loop that is the dominant, unfailing strategy, with the only exception being Pizzeria Simulator. Technically, each customized night also has a dominant, unfailing strategy that will guarantee victory. For example, I'll use a very simplified version of the first preset challenge, Bear Attack 1's dominant strategy, which is check the office, check the doors, use the flashlight, check the camera, and repeat. So we fall into the same loop of repetitive gameplay that kept games 2 through 5 from being as terrifying as the original or Pizzeria Simulator, correct? Well, not quite. Scott's solution to prevent repetitive gameplay was adding Dee Dee, an animatronic that will randomly appear and add one of the 50 other animatronics to the roster. And most of the time, this changes the current dominant strategy for that run. For example, if Dee Dee summons the puppet, the new dominant strategy for Bears Attack 1 would be check office, check doors, use the flashlight, check camera, wind music box, repeat. The catch is, you are never told who she summoned. This creates fear of the unknown until you know who it is and how to deal with them. But you will never die cheaply, because if you use the strategy you use when blocking every animatronic, you can block whatever Dee Dee throws at you without even knowing what it is. So even with randomness, there is always a way to win, unlike in FNAF 6, where you had a chance of failing regardless of what you did. Making all customized challenges a small part of one big gameplay loop is pretty genius, because Scott can add in parts from the main gameplay loop randomly and still have it possible to be beaten. So what keeps people from just doing the strategy that you would do to fend off every animatronic all the time? Well, the gameplay loop of this strategy, or 50-20 mode as it's called, is so hard to pull off that only 10 people in the world have been able to beat 50-20 mode since I've recorded this. Meaning, always using the 50-20 mode's dominant strategy is near impossible without literal weeks of practice. My favorite part about all this is everyone I have seen play the game, from Dawko to Markiplier, has died at least once, not due to the new animatronic Dee Dee summons, but because they freak out trying to find who Dee Dee summoned and fail to remember the basic gameplay loop they were actually supposed to do.
Like, I had everything on track then, but then as soon as Dee Dee spawns someone, you panic, and you're like, oh, I need to check who's activated, because if I don't check, it was Jacko Chica.
But Etra, you may ask, doesn't that mean playing on 50-20 mode will be just another repetitive loop like the other games? You can't change the gameplay of 50-20 mode by adding animatronics, since there are only 50 animatronics. Ha 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 ha. No, actually, there are 56. I lied, Scott lied. When it is 50-20 mode, an additional 6 animatronics outside the first 50 can be summoned by Shadow Dee Dee, meaning 50-20 mode is just a portion or subset of 56-20 mode, just like Bears Attack is a subset of 50-20 mode. The only difference is you shouldn't use the dominant strategy for 56-20 mode the entire time, because not every animatronic will be active throughout the run, and you have to focus on setup at the beginning of your run. All this means is you have to adapt your strategy to one of 32 different dominant strategies several times over 4.5 minutes to beat 50-20 mode. So, however you play the game, there is always fear of the unknown without unpreventable deaths, which is kind of beautiful for the conclusion of this series. Through it, we can see the journey of one man as a struggling game designer who tried to figure out what made his game so terrifying. You can see him think, was it trial and error, or lack of information? Was it the setting or design of the beasts? Was it the story that held it all together that created the fear in the first game? In the end, he was finally able to recapture the spirit of the original game and perfected this system of fear in a way never seen before. But hey, as always, thank you for watching. If you like this video, consider subscribing in order to be notified of my new videos when they come out. Regardless of your choice, have a wonderful day, and I will catch you all next time.